just my job 5 days a week. A rocket man, a rocket man. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out the fuse out there alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out the fuse out here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low. Oh, oh. I leaned back on my radio. Oh, oh. Some cat was laying down some rock and roll, not a soul, he said. Then the loud sound, it seemed to fade. Came back like a slow voice on a wave of fade. That was no DJ, that was hazy cosmic time. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in
crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbows and waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. We're after the same rainbows and waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend, Moon River and me.
Now that she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her head, she acts like summer and walks like rain, reminds me that there's a time to change. Since the return of her stay on the moon, she listens like spring and she talks like June. But tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and that heaven is overrated? Tell me, did you fall for a shooting star, one without a permanent scar, and then you missed me while you were looking for yourself out there? Tell me, did the wind sweep you off your feet? Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day and head back toward the Milky Way? Tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and that heaven is overrated? Tell me, did you fall for a shooting star? One without a permanent scar, and there you missed me while you were looking for yourself. Na 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 na. And then you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day. And then you fall for a shooting star, fall for a shooting star. And now you're lonely looking for yourself out there. Cause you're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. Cause you're a sky full of stars. Cause you light up the path. I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do. 'Cause
seconds. We're going that flight. We're going that alarm. 30 feet down, 2.5. If it doesn't reoccur, we'll be go. 30 seconds. What was it? 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. 1201 alarm. That time we'll go, flight. Okay, we're go. We've had shutdown. Listen,
selfie spot, so we'll move out of the way. Charles, we'll let you get up on the stage, and we're happy to be with you here from Pat Charcoal, site 100 years ago of Dr. Robert Goddard sending that liquid-fueled rocket up into space.
The speaking program is going to start in a couple of minutes. If everybody wants to come towards the porch, speaking program will start in less than minutes.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Ann Kavanaugh, and as chair of the Auburn Select Board, it is my honor to welcome you back to Auburn. 100 years ago this Monday, this very ground was the Ward Farm, where Robert Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. Today, we gather here at Packaghaw Golf Course to commemorate that moment in history. On behalf of the town of Auburn, I am honored to welcome our neighbors, our students, and our guests to the site where the space age began. We are privileged today to be joined by a truly distinguished group of guests and speakers. Please join me in welcoming Senator Michael Moore and Representative Paul Frost, members of our legislative delegation, Adam Feldberg and Bob LePage, representing the Office of Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, the members of the Auburn Select Board and our town manager, Dory Vecchio, Dr. Grace Wang, president of Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Travis Wohlrap and the team from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Kevin Schindler, Dr. Thomas John Hastings, and our student readers, Sophia Glidden and Joseph Morgan. Thank you all for joining us to witness this historic milestone. Today we are here for one purpose, to stand near the ground where Robert Goddard stood 1 century ago and to honor the moment he successfully launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. While Saturday was a celebration of his enduring legacy at the park that bears his name, this afternoon is about the event itself, the grit, the science, and the 41-foot flight that proved the stars were within our reach. We are here to ensure that the flame lit on this field 100 years ago continues to burn bright for the next century. An event 100 years in the making is only possible through the dedication of many people. I want to recognize the two groups that have been the heart and soul of this centennial effort. The Goddard Centennial Committee, led by Stephen Coleman Jr., and the Friends of the Centennial Committee, led by Sylvia Ruiz. I also want to specifically recognize Charles Slatkin and the Wonder Mission. Charles saw the potential for this anniversary to be more than a local ceremony. It could be a national moment of recognition. Through his work on the space trail and his dedication to preserving the Goddard ancestral home, he has helped ensure that this cradle of the space age will never be forgotten. We thank him for his leadership in helping us honor our past while challenging us to inspire tomorrow's Goddards. I would also like to recognize Larry McNay and Scott Lisk, who traveled from Texas to join us for this celebration and who brought with them the remarkable rocket displayed here today. And we are grateful to the members of the Central Massachusetts Space Modeling Society, CMAS, whose expertise and dedication are providing the logistics and safety for the rocket launches here today. Finally, I want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our town employees, Department of Public Works, to our public safety teams and administrative staff, whose work behind the scenes has made these events possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce Peter Chestnut, who will provide our opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Kavanaugh, and good afternoon to everyone gathered here in Auburn and to those joining us through the live stream. Earlier today, we gathered in Goddard Park to honor the legacy of Robert Goddard. Now we stand on the ground where that legacy truly began. The ground beneath our feet is where the age of modern rocketry began. Great journeys often begin in quiet places, and 100 years ago, one began here. On this field, a small rocket rose in the sky and proved that a liquid-fueled rocket could lift itself from the ground and fly. Later in our program, we'll reenact the moment when that small rocket first rose from this field on March 16, 1926. Nearly a century ago, Robert Goddard wrote words that have inspired the explorers who followed in his footsteps. It is difficult to say what is impossible, for the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow. For every problem that is solved, another is created, and the way to the solution is through the mind and the hand of man. Earlier, when we gathered at Goddard Park, it was to celebrate the dream, the legacy, and the monuments we have built in our town center. But today, we are here for the reality. We have come to this ground to witness the result of that mind and hand and to mark the place where the impossible became history. It has been said that if the dunes of North Carolina gave us our wings, this field in Auburn gave us the stars. This is the Kitty Hawk of rocketry. We are not the first to recognize the significance of this ground. For a century, this field has been a place of pilgrimage for those who understood what happened here. It began with a small group who stood in the snow on this farm. Dr. Percy Roop and Harry Sachs, who sheltered behind an improvised wooden door as they watched the birth of the space age. On that cold afternoon in 1926, only a handful of people stood here to witness what happened. While Robert himself was always looking towards the next horizon, it was Esther Goddard who became the guardian of this site's memory. As a direct participant in the 1926 launch, she ensured that the exact location was preserved for history. 60 years ago on Monday, that history was permanently marked when a modest granite obelisk was placed at the site of the first launch. We have a remarkable photograph from that dedication, Esther Goddard standing behind the obelisk with Werner von Braun and Charles Lindbergh. Esther was the witness returning to the place she helped make famous. Von Braun represented the next generation of rocketry, the engineer who would lead the development of the Saturn V rocket that carried astronauts to the moon. And Lindbergh represented the bridge between two eras of flight. Just as he looked back to the Wright brothers and Kitty Hawk as the foundation of his own transatlantic flight, he recognized that the liquid-fueled rocket ignited on this farm represented the next giant leap. He saw the Kitty Hawk in the soil and helped Goddard's work from a quiet farm to the world's stage. Today, we have brought that history out of the shadows. If you look towards the far side of the pond, between the water and the fairway, you will see that obelisk. At its base, we have recreated the scene of that 1926 morning. There you will find a full-scale replica of Nell in her launch stand, protected by the windscreen and safety wall built by Robert and his team. We invite you to visit that recreation later today to see the humble, hand-built beginnings of the space age, verified by those who were actually there. And to bring that history to life, for all of us gathered here, we will launch a scale version of Nell during our program, ensuring that the flame first lit on this field a century ago continues to burn bright. The next day, Robert Goddard recorded the event in his journal with the quiet understatement of a scientist, a simple sentence describing an extraordinary moment. As we stand here today, we celebrate a milestone of physics and engineering, the day the rocket flew. But for Robert Goddard, his true anniversary day was something more personal. While the world remembers the March launch on this farm, Robert spent every year of his life celebrating a different date, the quiet autumn afternoon when his vision was first born. To understand where that persistence began, we must go back even farther than 1926, back to the 17-year-old boy in a Worcester cherry tree, who looked towards the horizon and saw something no one else could. To begin our journey, I invite Sophia Glidden to share the story of that first anniversary.
On the afternoon of October 19, 1899, a 17-year-old boy climbed a cherry tree behind a barn in Worcester. The boy was Robert Hutchings Goddard. Years later, he wrote about that moment. It was one of the quiet, colorful afternoons of sheer beauty which we have in October in New England. And as I looked towards the field to the east, I imagined how wonderful it would be to make some device which had even the possibility of ascending to Mars. In that quiet revelation, among the branches, a dream was born. He called it his anniversary day. The insult would imagine became a lifelong pursuit.
I would like to invite to the microphone Auburn's town manager, Dory Vecchio.
Thank you so much. As Sophia just shared, that October afternoon changed Robert Goddard forever. Reflecting on the moment he climbed down from those branches, he later wrote, "I was a different boy when I descended that tree from when I ascended. Existence, at last, seemed very purposive. That sense of purpose stayed with him for nearly 3 decades. Through years of math and lonely experiments, leading him eventually to this snowy field in Auburn. Recognizing the importance of where it all began, he even returned to photograph that cherry tree, capturing the small ladder he had built leaning against it, preserving the place where his dream first took place. On March 16th, 1926, that pursuit finally took flight. Here, on the fairways of what was then the Ward Farm, he launched the world's first liquid fuel rocket. It rose only 41 feet, but it opened the pathway to modern science exploration. The cherry tree that witnessed his inspiration did not last forever. It fell in the Great New England Hurricane of 1938. In his diary, Goddard wrote simply, "Cherry tree down, have to carry on alone." But the vision that took root in that tree did not fall. It carried humanity beyond the fields he looked upon that October afternoon, beyond the atmosphere, and toward the planets he once imagined. As astronomer Carl Sagan famously described this journey, from the cherry tree to Mars. Today, as we commemorate the centennial of that first liquid fuel rocket here on the field where it occurred, we remember the climb into the cherry tree that helped launch the space age and the vision of Robert H. Goddard, who dared to look east and see the future. I would now like to introduce our historian for the weekend, Kevin Schindler, author of Robert Goddard's Massachusetts.
Hello. I come to you from Flagstaff, Arizona, and Lowell Observatory, whose founder, Percival Lowell, grew up just a couple miles from Robert Goddard. Every great hero's journey begins with a moment of awakening, a spark that changes the course of a life. For Robert Goddard, that moment came, as we heard, on October 19th, 1899, when he climbed a cherry tree in his Worcester backyard. As he looked out over the fields and sky, he imagined a machine that could carry people far beyond Earth. He later wrote, from that day forward, he never stopped thinking about space. The cherry tree dream, as we've heard, was his call to action, to a purpose, his moment of clarity, the beginning of a journey that would eventually lead him here to Auburn, at what was then Aunt Effie's farm. 100 years ago, on this very ground, Goddard answered that call. With a modest rocket and a belief that defied the limits of his time, he launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. It flew only 2.5 seconds and rose only 41 feet. The rocket's reach was short, but it marked the moment that humanity entered a new era, and its legacy stretches across the cosmos. Robert Goddard was a legendary scientist, engineer, and visionary, and his contributions forever changed our place in the universe. As the Wright brothers enabled our conquest of the skies above, Goddard drove us to the universe beyond. And as we heard, just as Kitty Hawk became the birthplace of powered flight, Auburn became the birthplace of modern rocketry. 2 quiet landscapes that launched 2 extraordinary journeys. When Goddard lit that engine on March 16, 1926, he crossed from the world of what was known into the world of what was possible. Yet like all heroes, he faced trials. Many dismissed the ideas as fantasy, funding was scarce, recognition was rare. Some mocked him openly. But he pressed on, guided by imagination, perseverance, and the memory of that cherry tree vision that had first shown him the stars. But no hero traveled alone. At Goddard's side was Esther, his wife, and steadfast companion. She photographed his experiments, documented his breakthroughs, and stood with him through the doubt, ridicule, and isolation. Esther was his partner and the one who helped carry the dream when the burden grew heavy. The rocket that rose from this field was small in stature but mighty in consequence. It proved that liquid fuel could lift a craft skyward, the essential breakthrough that would one day carry humans to the moon and beyond. Goddard's journey, of course, did not end with this flight. His influence traveled further than even he could have imagined. During the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, when the members of our species first set foot on another world for the first time, Buzz Aldrin carried a copy of the first book to the moon with him. That book was a miniature biography of Robert Goddard. In that act, Aldrin honored the man whose ideas made that giant leap possible. A small book carried across 250,000 miles became a symbol of gratitude from one explorer to another. It was a reminder that the hero's journey, begun here in Auburn, ultimately helped humanity take its first steps onto another world. Today, that same spirit of exploration lives on in the people, places, and organizations around the world, such as the Wonder Mission, led by the inimitable Charles Slatkin. As we heard about the Wonder Mission earlier, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating initiatives and experiences that inspire the next generation of scientists, engineers, educators, innovators, and visionaries. This mission embodies the next chapter of the story, a new generation answering the call to adventure, pushing boundaries, and daring to imagine what lies beyond the horizon. The Wonder Mission stands as proof that the spark Goddard ignited here still burns brightly, inspiring new heroes of all ages to arise. A centennial is not just a celebration of the past, it's a moment to recognize the arc of a story still unfolding. Goddard's journey teaches us the values that shape every great quest. The power of imagination, because Goddard saw possibilities where others saw limits. The value of perseverance, because he kept working even when the world doubted him. And the importance of curiosity, because Goddard never, ever stopped asking, what if? These are the qualities that carried Goddard from the cherry tree to this field, and from this field into the pages of the history books. In the hero's journey, the final stage is the return, when the hero brings back wisdom, gifts, and inspiration for the community. Today, we are the community receiving that gift. Goddard's legacy is not just technological, it's aspirational. It tells us that greatness can emerge from quiet places, that bold ideas can take root in small towns, and that the next breakthrough may come from someone standing right here, looking up at the sky with wonder. As we honor this centennial, we're invited to step into the story ourselves. The next century of exploration will be shaped by those who choose to dream boldly, learn deeply, and support the next generation of explorers. In his valedictorian speech at his high school graduation, Goddard said, "The dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow." His journey began with a dream, and ours can too. Here's to all of us turning our dreams into reality. Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming our State Senator, Michael Moore.
Good afternoon. You guys are lucky here for this one and not the morning ceremony. It was cold. So I have from the State Senate two acknowledgments. But first, as a historian who was speaking, if you think back to his aspirational dreams when he was working on this experiment, if he were able to come back today and to see how his experiment has affected our lives and continues to affect our lives, from all the different technologies that's being used to, as we're exploring right now, trying to put someone leapfrog from the moon to Mars. It can all stem back to the experiment that was done here. And what a legacy. Think about that. If you have a family member to think back, that you've got a family member who inspired all this technology, all these accomplishments in our world, it really is astonishing. So I have two things, two recognitions from the State Senate. The first I have is a citation. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to the town of Auburn in recognition of having the immense honor of celebrating the Goddard Centennial at the location in Auburn of Robert Goddard's first liquid-fueled rocket launch. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends best wishes for continued success, that the citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy of transmitted by the clerk. It's signed by myself, Senator Moore, but Senate President Karen Spilka, and I guess Steve, or the town manager, or the... I also have a resolution that was passed by the Senate last week commending the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee for its recognition of the 100th anniversary of the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. Whereas the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee will recognize the 100th anniversary of Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard's first liquid-fueled rocket launch at events to be held March 14th through 16th in the town of Auburn. And whereas, in a historic achievement that served as a precursor for the United States space program on March 16th, 1926, and I think about that, for the space program, which now we have our own Space Force. On March 16th, Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard launched the world's first liquid rocket from the Asa Ward Farm in the town of Auburn, a feat that earned him recognition as the father of modern rocket propulsion. And whereas in 1998, legislation was enacted by the Massachusetts House and Senate and signed into law by Governor Argio Paul Salucci, establishing an annual observance of March 16th as Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard Day in the Commonwealth. And whereas the Auburn Public Schools renamed their mascot and the school department logo the Auburn Rockets to honor and recognize Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard and his achievement in launching the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. And whereas the town of Auburn has incorporated the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket into the fabric of the community and has continually celebrated and honored the achievements of Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard and his wife, Esther Goddard, who recorded and preserved her husband's research and accomplishments. Now therefore be resolved that the Massachusetts Senate hereby commends the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee on their recognition of the 100th anniversary of the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket, and be it further resolved that a copy of these resolutions be transmitted by the Senate clerk to the town of Auburn. And it's, again, it's signed by myself, and it's also signed by the Senate President, Karen E. Spilka, and I guess town manager, or no, Ann?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming two gentlemen here representing the office of our Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Adam Freudberg and Mr. Bob LePage.
Good afternoon. Oh, that we can, as a former instructor and teacher, I know we can do better than that. Good afternoon. There we go. I think it's important to reflect upon today of the journey. The journey of that young child, like those in the field, who were experimenting, were supported by their teachers, in a local public school, incredible higher education partners who gave somebody the opportunity to dream, to enact a vision of what may be possible, to explore potential, and to be supported by a broad community who valued education, valued science, technology, engineering, and math, and supported that journey. A commitment in the Commonwealth that continues today, where we have the strongest innovation economy, perhaps in the world, certainly in the country, where we continue to invest resources in our schools, in our higher education partners, to ensure that all have an opportunity to dream and to achieve success here in the Commonwealth. I thank you all for coming out today to celebrate. I inspire you to continue to make those investments, to support those students, to invite them to dream about their futures. And I'm going to ask my colleague Adam to join me in a proclamation from the governor's office.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary LePage, for all you do for our Commonwealth at the Executive Office of Education. Very honored to be here, and in a moment we'll present this proclamation on behalf of the Governor and Lieutenant Governor. First, I do want to thank the town and the town manager and Select Board and Steve for all of your great work in coordinating this with the committee, and to Senator Moore and Representative Frost and Worcester Mayor Petty, WPI President Wang, and all the other distinguished guests for being here today. I also want to point out a colleague in the audience, Ben Linville Engler. He's the Deputy Director and he's the lead for Commonwealth and Massachusetts Defense Sector Initiatives, and it's how the Commonwealth got connected here today for this event. Ben's here with his son and loves rockets, and very glad to have him here today. This is also extra special for me as a member of the Governor's staff who coordinates defense sector, military base, Space Force initiatives out of the Governor's office. I'm also a Clark alum, and I spent numerous hours at the Robert Goddard Library 2 decades ago, and just knowing that building, which was dedicated just a few months after a very important date. Who knows what happened July 20th, 1969? That's right, the moon landing, right? That library, the Goddard Library, was dedicated just a few months after that, and I spent a lot of time there when I was a student at Clark, and so it's extra special I get to present this proclamation today from the Governor and Lieutenant Governor. It's a proclamation that reads, whereas Massachusetts-born Dr. Robert H. Goddard is recognized internationally as the father of the space age, and whereas March 16th, 2026 marks the 100th anniversary of Dr. Goddard's successful launch of the world's first modern liquid-fueled rocket at his aunt's farm in Auburn, Massachusetts, and whereas Dr. Goddard was the first person to pursue the bold vision of pointing skyward, leaving Earth and leading the effort to explore the universe, and whereas this historic milestone is being honored and celebrated locally and nationally as the first launch centennial. And whereas we also celebrate today's and tomorrow's Goddards, the innovators, visionaries, scientists, students, educators, engineers, and dreamers who work tirelessly, often without recognition, to expand human knowledge and benefit humanity. And whereas Dr. Goddard's wife, Esther Goddard, was a true collaborator and instrumental partner in his success. She photographed and filmed every launch, fabricated parachutes, published and promoted his research, preserved his legacy, and defended his patents long after his passing. And whereas Dr. Goddard was born in his family's multi-generational home in Worcester, Massachusetts, he attended South High School, where he was inspired by his teachers, Calvin Andres and Miss Field. He graduated as class valedictorian. And whereas Dr. Goddard continued his education at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, and Clark University, where he conducted his research and built the first modern rocket. And whereas Worcester's unique combination of educational infrastructure, industrial capability, and sustained institutional support created the ecosystem that enabled Goddard to become the father of modern rocketry. And whereas Goddard's story served as a powerful reminder of the importance of investing in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And whereas by recognizing, elevating, and honoring Robert and Esther Goddard and those who carry forward their spirit, we can celebrate Massachusetts' legacy of transformative innovation and its role ushering in the space age to help inspire the next generation. Now, therefore, I, Maura T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim March 16, 2026, to be Robert Goddard Day, and urge all the residents of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Signed by the Governor, Maura T. Healy, the Lieutenant Governor, Kimberly Driscoll, and the Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Francis Galvin. Congratulations and thank you for having us here today.
Thank you very much. Offering an insight, I'd like to introduce Pete Chesna. Come up for the rocket launch, the moment we've all been waiting for.
All right, everyone. We're just about the time on Monday, about 2:30 when this occurred. Now, I have them on the phone because they can't hear us from up here, so I need all the little kids, everyone to point your attention down towards that CMAS flag down there, blowing in the breeze. And we're all going to count down very loudly together. We're just going to watch. All right, is everyone ready? Okay, we'll give the kids a chance to get in front there. Nice and loud. You don't have to go down there. We're going to see it from here. Okay, let's start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch. And there it is. Nell flies again. Thank you for your help.
Offering a post-launch reflection, I would like to invite to the microphone the Reverend Dr. Thomas John Hastings, whose 100 years ago on Monday, his father was in this field and witnessed the original launch of Dr. Goddard. Mr. Hastings.
So just a moment ago, thank you very much, and I'm really honored to be here. Just a moment ago, we watched a rocket rise to the sky. 100 years ago, on this very field in Auburn, Massachusetts, a small group of people witnessed something the world had never seen before. In 1926, this place was known simply as Aunt Effie's Farm, where Robert H. Goddard came to test an idea many believed impossible. In his journal that evening, he wrote simply, March 16, went to Auburn with Henry Sachs in the morning. Esther and Mr. Roop came out at 1 p.m., tried rocket at 2:30. It rose 41 feet and went 184 feet in 2.5 seconds after the lower half of the nozzle had burned off. A brief and humble entry for a moment that would change the world. It was the first small step for rocketry, a 41-foot ascent that would eventually lead to a 250,000-mile journey, and to those words, a small step for man and a giant leap for mankind. The next day, Goddard returned to his journal. At this time, his words captured something of the wonder of what had happened after he had reflected. Quote, the first flight with a rocket using liquid propellants was made yesterday at Aunt Effie's farm in Auburn. A simple statement again. He described the stillness of that winter day and the strange pause before the rocket rose up into the sky. The day was clear and comparatively quiet. Even though the release was pulled, the rocket did not rise at first, but the flame came out and there was a steady roar. Then the rocket came to life. After a number of seconds, it rose slowly until it cleared the frame, and then at express train speed, curving over to the left and striking ice and snow, still going at a rapid rate. Then Goddard recorded something more than mechanics. He captured the feeling of it. It looked almost magical as it rose, as if it said, I've been here long enough. I think I'll be going somewhere else, if you don't mind. Esther Goddard, his wife, described it in her own way. It was like a fairy or an aesthetic dancer as it started off. That rocket's brief flight 41 feet into the air, lasting just 2.5 seconds, opened the door to modern spaceflight. From this snowy field in Auburn, my hometown, to satellites orbiting Earth, to astronauts walking on the moon, to spacecraft exploring the planets, and even the vastness between the stars. All of it traces back to that quiet afternoon in March 1926, when a small rocket rose from the snow and the journey to space had begun. But for most of the world, that day was a secret. Goddard didn't seek the spotlight. He sought the truth. He was a scientist. Apart from his small team, very few people could say that they were truly there, who felt the steady roar and saw the flash of fire against the New England snow. One of those people was my father. He was 10 years old. While Robert Goddard was recording the technical success in his journal and Esther was seeing aesthetic dancers in the air, a young boy was standing in this very field watching the impossible happen with his own eyes. The story he carried with him and the story he passed down to me is not just about a machine that flew 41 feet. It's about what it felt like to be a witness to a miracle. The following story was told by my late father, Gerald Patrick Hastings Sr., and I am his second son and the third of his 4 children. When I was a student at Boston College, I used to come home on the weekends to see my girlfriend, and I would go back to Boston on Sunday evenings, and my dad would drive me back. Those hour-long drives were a perfect chance to chat with Dad and get to know more about his life. I peppered him with questions about his childhood, youth, and service in the Army as a technical sergeant in General Patton's Third Army. Dad was born on November 28, 1915, and his parents had 5 siblings who lived in Quinsigamon Village, the Greenwood Street area. So here's what Dad told me on one of those drives back to Boston College. One afternoon in March 1926, Dad and his friends climbed up the hill from Quinsig Village to the Ward's farm to go sledding on the newly fallen snow. While they were sledding, they saw a vehicle pull up on the property. It didn't look like farm equipment, so it piqued their curiosity. They watched from a distance as 4 people in heavy coats got out of the vehicle and removed some rather large objects. They walked through the snowy field, stopping here at what we now know as the launch site, actually down there. Dad commented that the scene felt very strange. He and his friends continued looking on with great interest as the nameless visitors took whatever it was they had removed from the vehicle, assembled the pieces, and Dad was only 10 years old at the time, so you can imagine how his imagination soared. Suddenly, they saw fire and smoke and heard a loud noise as some object shot up into the air. Afterwards, the strangers in dark coats ran through the snow, gathered up what it was they had brought and set on fire, and they put the pieces back into their vehicle. Then they left the scene. Dad and his friends shook their heads at each other, completely baffled by what they had just witnessed. And they continued sledding like you would expect them to. Sometime later, they learned that Dr. Robert Goddard had launched the world's first liquid-propelled rocket at Aunt Effie's Ward Farm on that very afternoon they were sledding. As they grew up, they gradually realized the significance of the event they had witnessed firsthand. He also shared this story with my younger brother, Brian, who's here today, too. Dad was an honest and trustworthy person. I believe to this day that he and his friends had witnessed one of the most momentous events of the 20th century, and I only wish he could be here. This day was important to history as the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903. This moment changed the world forever and secured his place, Dr. Goddard's place, as the father of modern rocketry. News of the day said there were no witnesses except Goddard, his wife Esther, and 2 assistants from Clark University. Little did they know that a few boys from Quinsig Village were looking on when they lit this torch that ushered in the space age. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Hastings, for that reflection. I would now like to introduce from the Goddard Space Center, Travis Wolrab.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How was that launch? That was pretty awesome to see. It's quite sacred ground we're standing on here, and I'm just sort of feeling it myself. As soon as I got here, I sort of took it all in, and it's remarkable that we get to stand here almost 100 years later and take in the significance of it. And I'm not going to repeat all of that, and I realize all the experts are behind me here. But I will say I do come from NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and that's his namesake NASA Center, and we try to carry that legacy the best we can. A lot of the times the visitors come and we're describing Robert Goddard's accomplishments, his accolades, and the reasons that the research he did enables us at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to do what we do. I would not be standing here today if not for Robert Goddard, and frankly, none of you would be, unless you're a golfer, of course, but even today is not the best conditions for that, right? And I also wanted to invite everybody here. If you want to come inside the clubhouse here, I brought a little piece of history with me. This was donated to NASA Goddard Space Flight Center at some time in the 70s. I wasn't sure from who, but this is a real rocket cone, a nose cone from a rocket that got in the 1930s when he was in Roswell, New Mexico, doing his research there. So you can come in, you can take a picture with it if you like, and anyway, it's a glorious piece of history. He touched this, so you could touch it now too. Take a picture with it, take it in. With that said, I want to send the congratulations to the town of Auburn and Worcester. I probably didn't say that right, and I apologize. To the folks behind me and everybody that's been a part of this celebration, if you're here today, congratulations. Right, you all are carrying on the legacy of what I've done this morning at Goddard Park as the cradle of the space age. Right, we talk about Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. I would hearken this area of the country is it's where it all began. All right. Right now we have 2 interstellar probes, as mentioned, that have left the solar system, and that all traces back to this field. We have the Parker Solar Probe, which is studying the sun. Literally, I made this example this morning. I'll repeat it. If the sun was on one end zone of a football field and the Earth was on the other, the Parker Solar Probe is on the 3-yard line near the sun. That's crazy. That is how close we are studying the sun. All right, and that was all because of what took place in this field 100 years ago. In just over 2 weeks, we are anticipating to launch 4 astronauts farther from Earth than we have ever sent humans before. And to me, that's and for everybody, that's a huge, remarkable human achievement. And it's great that it's coming just 100 years after the man that made it happen. And when you think about that time scale, it was 1926 to 1960. I was at 43 years. And then, look at us now. We're about to establish a permanent moon base. And that all starts with Artemis 2's human flight. That's going to go around the moon and come back. But they're going thousands of miles past the moon before they come home. And it's going to be an amazing trip. And so be prepared to get some amazing footage, some 4K quality views of the far side of the moon, which we don't get to see ever here on Earth. So that should be interesting and fascinating, too. There's a lot to look forward to. And, the other thing I want to mention here is Robert Goddard, from reading all his notes and his history, there's a lesson to be taken from that, too. If you're out there and you're studying something, even if you don't think it's important, take notes, right? Record that history, because you never know if generations from now somebody's going to be reading that. I mean, we know so much about Goddard because he recorded so much, right? He was a very... from what I come to understand, he was a kind of a private person, right? Didn't really take the criticism, to heart, but he didn't like it either. So, I'm just going to be in the shadows and I'm going to do my work, and that's what he did. And it's very sad that he died before he could see a rocket leave our atmosphere, one of his liquid fuel designs. But at the same time, he knew it was coming. So you can rest assured knowing that he knew that his work was very important, and he had the vision to see it through. And that's probably the most important part of this. You can sit down and you can do all the math, but to actually execute it, right? And that's what NASA does too, right? We we do the impossible every day. That's what we're trying. We're trying to do something that's never been done. And so because of that, we understand and recognize the importance of what took place here. And so again, it's an absolute honor. Thank you for having us. And on behalf of the National Space and Aeronautics Administration, congratulations and Godspeed with carrying on this legacy. You guys are doing a great job. So thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. As you know, Dr. Goddard was born and raised in the city of Worcester. And Worcester has been an amazing partner and shares with us this historic moment as partners in Dr. Goddard's journey. I would like to recognize Worcester's Mayor, Joe Petty, who is here with us this afternoon. Welcome, Mayor Petty. And the childhood home that Dr. Goddard grew up in is now owned by an amazing organization called the Wonder Mission that was founded by Charles Slatkin. And Charles is here with us today. I don't know where you are, Charles, but Charles had a vision of what was going to happen on this field today, well over a year ago, that we've been working towards. And his right hand, Mr. Phil Nidri, they were very instrumental in helping this committee in putting this together over the last year. So thank you, Charles, and thank you, Phil. The amazing educational institutions that are in the city of Worcester, Dr. Goddard attended WPI. And here with us this afternoon, the president of WPI, Dr. Grace Wong.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here in Auburn at the very site of the 1926 launch where the space age began. Standing here today, it's hard not to feel a sense of awe. 100 years ago, on this very ground, Robert Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. The flight lasted only a few seconds, as you heard from others, and it rose just a few dozen feet. But in that moment, humanity took its first real step towards the space. Today, we celebrate the man who started it. At Worcester Polytechnic Institute, we are especially proud of Robert Goddard and his deep ties with the university. He was a WPI graduate, class of 1908. He later taught physics at the WPI, and some of his earliest research happened actually at the WPI campus. Those experiments captured something that still defines WPI today: the belief that theory must test it through practice, and that curiosity must lead to the real-world impact. That spirit helped shape Goddard's journey, and it continues to shape generations of WPI's faculty, students, and staff. Today, our people are conducting space-related research that continues to push boundaries of science and engineering. And the spirit of Goddard's exploration, and he has embodied even more alive on campus at WPI today. Our researchers are studying everything from advanced manufacturing for space applications to how materials, fluids, and electronics behave in the unique conditions of space. And much of this work happens in collaboration with industry partners and local companies here, helping strengthen the innovation economy right here in Commonwealth. And our graduates carry that work even further. WPI alumni are helping shape the future of the space industry at organizations like SpaceX, NASA, Blue Origin, and across the growing aerospace industry. And others are applying space-enabled technologies to fields ranging from communications to climate monitoring and to medicine to advanced manufacturing. And some of you probably heard about our former department chair of chemical engineering, Al Sacco Jr. When he was at the WPI and back in 1995, he also blasted into the space and into the Space Shuttle Columbia as a payload specialist. And during that mission, he and his colleagues conducted experiments in material science, biotechnology, combustion science, and fluid mechanics inside the Space Lab module. Scientists and astronauts like Al Sacco carry forward the legacy that begin right here. They not only advance our understanding of science, they inspire the next generation to pursue careers in science, engineering, and technology, and to imagine what is possible. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful legacy of Robert Goddard. One person with a bold idea can change the trajectory of humanity. And that idea also needs a community that encourage experimentation, mentorship, and discovery. And that ecosystem helped shape Goddard's work a century ago. It continues to fuel innovation today. WPI is proud to be part of that story. 100 years ago, a rocket rose from this very field and launched the space age. Today, we celebrate not just a historic moment, but the enduring spirit of curiosity, ingenuity, and determination that make it possible. And as we look to the future, WPI, along with all of you, are ready to continue to serve as the launchpad for more than innovators, just as we did for Robert Goddard. Thank you.
Thank you, President Wong. I would now like to invite to the microphone school student Morgan, who's going to read a passage from Goddard's journal.
After the success of the first flight here in Auburn, Robert Goddard didn't stop. Looking past the next field and toward the next century. Reflecting on the future of his work, he once wrote, "The view is always changing. What was once a distant dream is now a problem to be solved. We must remember that no matter how far we have come, there's always a further horizon." Robert Goddard once said that we should not be discouraged by how small our first steps might seem. He knew that the 41 feet he gained on this field were just the beginning of a journey that would never truly end. As a student today, I am proud to stand on the ground where that journey began.
Thank you, Joe. Great job. As Joseph just stated, Robert Goddard knew that his work here was only the beginning. Today, as we commemorate the centennial of the first liquid-fueled rocket launched by Robert H. Goddard, we remember that the path to the stars did not begin at a space center or in a distant launch pad. It began here in Massachusetts, in the imagination of a young boy sitting high in a cherry tree on a quiet October afternoon. Looking out across an autumn field, he wondered how a device might rise towards the sky and even reach Mars. Years later, that dream brought him here to this field in Auburn, Massachusetts. Here on March 16, 1926, a small rocket rose from the snow and proved that liquid-fueled flight was possible. Among those present that day was his wife, Esther Goddard, whose support, encouragement, and belief in his work sustained him through the years of experimentation. Standing nearby with a motion picture camera, she recorded moments from that historic day, including the ignition of the rocket's motor and Robert Goddard standing beside the empty launch frame after the flight. Through her camera, she preserved a glimpse of the moment when the age of liquid-fueled rockets began. Because of that vision, because of the persistence that followed, humanity eventually reached the moon and beyond. From a quiet cabbage field in Auburn, the path to the stars began. Just as the dunes of Kitty Hawk marked the beginning of flight in the air, this field marked the beginning of flight beyond it. More than a century ago, Robert Goddard told his high school classmates, "It is difficult to say what is impossible, for the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow." And here on this field where that dream first took flight, we remember Robert and Esther Goddard, and the dream that carried humanity to the stars and into the vastness between them. The dream of yesterday became the hope of today, and the reality we celebrate here in Auburn. Over the course of this centennial celebration, we have journeyed from the rededication of Goddard Park to the very ground where history was made. We have looked back to a boy in a cherry tree and looked up at the legacy he has left behind. While our formal centennial ceremony now comes to a close, the spirit of this field remains very much alive. As the sun begins to set on the historic anniversary, we invite you to stay and enjoy this remarkable place. Our friends at CMAS will continue launching rockets throughout the afternoon, keeping the fire lit and Goddard's spirit soaring over Auburn. Our centennial ceremony is now adjourned. And on behalf of the Select Board, Town Manager, the Goddard Centennial Committee, and all of our partners, thank you for being part of this 100-year flight.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel like we can discuss it. The fact that Abby and others are very much. This is a fun dialogue, really. It's not a operational. I mean, we've got them in a loop, but we didn't give them. You can give
Todd, get in. Dan.
All right. Great. We'll talk. Yeah, we're not doing a fancy picture.
Requested that everyone sit down, get prepared for events that are coming. And close with very remarks. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you very much. Hey, great you guys can be
Yeah,
out
it's
here.
fantastic.
Thank you
Well
very
done.
much. Appreciate it.
You're next.
Yes, yes. I work multiple roles.
Okay.
With the city manager, Mike O'Brien.
Check. Listen up. We got free cookies at the Auburn. What's it called again, Kristen? Auburn Friends Tent. Free cookies at the Auburn Friends. Sorry, I'm frozen. Auburn Friends Tent. I've also got a dental plate, so it's difficult to talk. And I'm a cameraman, so I'm behind the camera all the time.